Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining me. I look forward to this hour every single week, and I think it's so beautiful that you're choosing to start your mornings with learning about Eretz Yisrael and learning Torah. I can't wait to start, so we'll start. Last week, we spoke about the Dead Sea in the area of Sodom and Amorah in connection to the Parashat, and my inspiration now for classes is literally Parashat HaShavua, because it took place in Eretz Yisrael. I open up the Torah, I read the Parasha, and I say, what could I speak about this week connected? Because living in Eretz Yisrael, where the Torah happened, just gives it a whole new meaning, and I'm really, really excited to share that with you. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, I'll share my screen with you. Okay. 2 summers ago, on a hot sunny day, I was with a tour group, and there wasn't Israel. So when you become a tour guide, there's 2 rules you need to know. The first one, they tell you need to know where the bathrooms are, how to find bathrooms at all time. And the second rule they tell you is you need to know how to find shade. So I was with a group and I was explaining, and I'm always conscious of the sun, and there wasn't really anywhere to go. But luckily, about 5 feet from where we were standing, there was this little girl, beautiful girl, about 8 years old, red hair, selling ices. So I said, great, my group could go and buy ices. So we all approached her and we asked the girl, how much are the ices? So here are the ices she's selling. And she said, the ices are a shekel, which was about a quarter. And we all looked at each other, and then we noticed her mother was standing nearby. So we walked to her mother and we said, thank you that your daughter is selling us ices, but we want to tell you that we think she's selling them for way too cheap. Ices don't cost 25 cents. At least $1. Now from the ice cream truck, they're probably up to $2. I don't even know what they're up to. Let her sell it for more. She could make a bigger profit. And the mother looked at us and she said, we live in Hebron. Hebron is where Abraham Avinu lived. It's where he did Hachnasat Orchim, where he welcomed guests. And that's what I want to teach my daughter. In the beginning of the day, we saw it was very hot. I asked her, how could we make things more comfortable for the people coming? She said, why don't we sell ices? So for me, it has nothing to do with the amount of money that she makes. It's just the gesture of welcoming people to Hebron. And after the mother responded that, we all looked at each other. And we're not used to thinking in that head, because growing up in America, we're used to thinking profit. If someone is good at cooking, why don't you sell it? Everything that we're good at, we look at how we could monetize it. And one, that was new, the fact that she wasn't looking at how much profit she could make. And 2, the fact that the mom was able to say, we live in Hebron, we're copying Avraham Avinu, we're doing Hachnasat Orchim. Like, wow, imagine what kind of childhood that is for the child, that she literally could say she is living where Abraham grew up. Which brings me to the topic of this week's class. We are going to be talking about Hebron and focusing on 3 points. 1, why Hebron? Why would someone live in Hebron? What's the importance of Hebron? So of course, we're going to start with the connection of the Tanakh. And also later on, what we're going to talk about is going to Hebron practically, because I know a lot of people would love to go, but they're nervous about going. Is it dangerous? Is it not? So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss, are the Avot and the Imahot really buried here? We learn and we read in this week's Parashat that they're buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah. But how do we know that that's really true? I could say there are about 2 graves in Israel. Maybe it's higher than 2. Let's say 5, where we know with 100% certainty that the people are actually buried there. There are actually people in Israel that have more than 1 grave, which means we don't really know where they're buried. The Ramban has 3. The Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, has 2. Rabbi Akiva also has 2. So is it really them? Is it not? So it has an amazing, amazing story. Spoiler, they are really buried here, and I'm going to tell you how we know. And 3rd, visiting Hebron today. Okay. Starting with this week's parasha, it says, "V'tamot Sarah b'Kiryat Arba hi Hebron ve'eretz Canaan vayivo Avraham mispod Sarah v'livkota." So we open up the parasha seeing that Sarah died in Hebron, which in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron. They have the same names. Today, and we're going to talk about it in a little while, there's 2 separate cities in Israel, Kiryat Arba and Hebron. But according to The Tanakh is the same place. They didn't differentiate, but today we differentiate. So Abraham buries her. Where else do we see? After Yaakov has his entire family, wife and kids, and he's going back to Yitzchak after meeting Esav, where does he go? He goes to Hebron. Because not only did Abraham and Sarah live in Hebron, well, if they lived in Hebron, that means Yitzchak did too. Yitzchak lived in Hebron, so Yaakov goes there. Where else do we see Hebron in the Tanakh? Okay. I'm going to share 4 with you. There's way more, but it should just be too many pages. So there's a ton. But another example where we see the Meraglim in Sefer B'Midbar. They're going and they're touring Israel and spying on Israel. And it says, Vayavo ad Hebron. And Rashi says that Kalev ben Yefuneh was the one that went to Hebron, and he went to Merat HaMachpelah and he prayed there. So already we see Hebron. And we have archaeology today in Hebron, which connects to the spies coming to Israel. And we also have this in itself could be a whole speech. David HaMelech. Hebron was a city in the kingdom of Yehuda, and David HaMelech ruled in Hebron 7 years and 6 months. Now, people always ask me, Adele, what's your favorite place in Israel? So for what? It depends. My favorite place to hike, my favorite place to eat lunch. It depends what. But if they're just my favorite place to guide. But right off the bat, if someone just said without detailing, I say Hebron. And my reason for Hebron being my favorite place is because I'm very connected to the Tanakh, and so much Tanakh happened in Israel. Here I gave 4 examples, but there's way more. So Tanakh, Israel, I love Hebron. And I hope by the end, if you haven't visited Hebron, you will definitely want to. And if you have, you'll want to go again. Usually I spend a day in Hebron and Kiryat Arba, which is not close to enough because there's just so much to say. So I'm going to give you a small taste of it. The first place I like stopping in Hebron is this. What are you looking at? So this over here are steps, and these 2 are walls. Now, they're surrounded by a gate right now. And what brings everyone here? So people, of course, go to Me'arat HaMachpelah, which we're going to talk about later. But what is these ruins that people are stopping by? So if you were there, you would see that there's the sign on the gate, and it has numbers. And it dates back each one of these walls or steps that I told you in the middle to a different time period. And if we look over here, number 3, which is this section, the other ones are earlier than that. It says this is the patriarchal era. This is the time of the Avot. Now, why is this the most exciting thing ever? Because if we open up the Torah to this week's Parashat, when Abraham is buying Me'arat HaMachpelah for 400 shekels from Ephron, says that Ephron is sitting among Benechet, his nation, and then Ephron is speaking to Abraham, Lecho ba'esh sha'ar ira, and I bolded that, for all the people that are sitting in the gate of the city. Now back then, the gate of the city was where all of the important transactions took place. It was a public area, people could see things, and Eshet Chayil, it's mentioned, and also we see Mordechai, Megillat Esther, he's sitting in Sha'ar HaMelech, he's sitting in the gate. The city gate was very important. And the transaction of Me'arat HaMachpelah took place by the city gate. Now, we found this huge wall and that dates back to the time of Abraham Avinu. We know Abraham Avinu did it by the city gate. We found the city gate. So very, very probable and likely that the purchase of Me'arat HaMachpelah took place right here. And how amazing that you could literally see that. And the little girl that was selling ices, she lived, we're going to look a little bit at her house, what kind of houses people live in Hebron. She lived across from the gate. Now, from this wall. So I mentioned that there's a gate around it. When I was 18, a very long time ago, now I'm 31, I was with a friend in Hebron for Sabbat. And I remember we were just sitting on a wall, and I think we were reading Tanakh or maybe speaking, dangling our feet off the wall. And I was aware of the Tanakh connections from back then. And at that moment, I remember thinking, wow, how amazing. I'm just sitting on a wall. I didn't know who built the wall because the sign wasn't there. They said, oh, maybe David HaMelech built it. Maybe this, maybe that. And now it's surrounded by gates. You can't actually sit on the wall. But I really felt so connected to the history. And whenever I go with groups here, of course, the first thing we do is we open up the Tanachim and read it, because to sit and read it, Abraham bought Me'arat HaMachpelah, and then you're looking at where he most probably bought it, is just incredible. And I'd like to show you pictures. So I took a group I don't even remember when, either last January or 2 Januaries ago. Last year. So this is Lisa Didia. For those of you that know her, she's a teacher in Barkai, and her kids, it was her son's Isaac Bar Mitzvah, and we're reading about the purchase of Me'arat HaMachpelah by the wall. Now, I said the little girl selling ices lived right here. So this is an aerial view of one of the 2 Jewish neighborhoods in Hebron known as Admot Ishai. Ishai was David HaMelech's father, and we read that David HaMelech lived in Hebron. And they named the neighborhood Admot Ishai, the lands of Ishai, of David's father. Now, if you notice, what the people are living in are caravans, and here they have a playground. The wall is right here, if you follow my mouse. So there's the gate, and there's the wall over here. And there's always little bikes over here from the kids playing. And she was right about there selling the isis tas. And after I saw this, and then I went to speak to her mother, I said, okay, I want to make a new friend. And I find that one of the most meaningful things you can do when you come to Israel, really any country, but especially Israel, is speak to people that live in Israel. Because the amount of stories they could share and experiences is just uncomparable to anything else. And that's what stays with you and sticks with you. I chose to open this class about Hebron, speaking about my interaction with her. The same for me. I love speaking to people that live here. And I really, really encourage you to do that. Now, I asked the woman, I said, do you want to come and speak to my group a little bit, talk about what it's like living here? Because there's tons of questions that people have, also not depicted, but nearby there's this big silver coffee urn that has bullet holes in it. There's some caravans where the cabinets have bullet holes, and people want to know, how long are you living here for? Is it scary living here? What do you think of us coming and being on your playground? So I'm going to save all that for later, but those are some of the questions that we're going to answer and some of the things that people want to know. And we'll see what it looks like for this Jewish community living in Hebron. When they look out the window, what do they see? Well, from one window, they see the wall. And what do they see from the other window? We'll see in a minute. So this is the street. You drive up the street. There's an army base right here. And also next to that, they have Kever Ruth and Yishai. Ruth from Megillat Ruth and Yishai, David HaMelech's father. There's a grave that they say might be theirs. And here are the caravans. And here is this building that has a fantastic lookout that I'm going to take you to in a minute. And this is what they're looking at. Now, God willing, I'm getting married in about a month, and I'm starting to look for an apartment. And what do I want? I want a pretty apartment. I want a balcony. I want a garden. I want all kinds of things. And this is not where the people live, but it could be that where their consideration in figuring out where to live is way more important. They're not doing it at all based on aesthetic beauty. They're doing it based on meaning. And as we continue, we'll see even more how what these people are doing is just really, really incredible. So this building over here is called Bet Menachem. And if we follow the sign over here towards the observatory, I want to show you the wall is right behind it, what we will see. Looking out, this is what you see. You're looking at Arabs' houses. There are 210,000 people living in Hebron. 99.9% of them are Arab. There are about 1,000 people total, including students of the yeshiva, are Jewish. Everyone else is Arab. We're going to talk about, I'm going to give you just more statistics in a minute, just to point out where Me'arat HaMachpelah is. And I know the first time I saw it, I was surprised because you learn in school, Me'arat HaMachpelah. Me'ara is a cave. You expect to see a cave. And this over here is not a cave at all. But we're going to, what it is today, it's this building built by Herod the Great. It's a very similar structure to the Kotel. And if I showed you 2 pictures of both side to side without the top part, you might not be able to differentiate because it's very similar type of building. The cave is underneath, which we're going to get to. And as we're looking at this picture, so I took it from all the way on top of the roof, and now we're looking down, which brings me to another pasuk. When Yaakov sent Yosef to go see how his brothers were doing, which didn't end well because then they took him and they threw him in the pit. Yaakov was living in Hebron, and it says, "Vayishlachehu me'emek Hebron," from the valley of Hebron. Now, when we're in Hebron and we look down and we see that the way Hebron is built, we could understand it. So another connection, we have Abraham living here, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Who wants to live in Hebron? You get to live where all the Avot live. Now, Hebron today, so some statistics. So we said there are 210,000 people. 99.9% are Palestinian. 85% of the land was given to the Palestinians. What do I mean by given? So the Jews living in Hebron dates back to the time of the Tanakh, and there was constant Jewish presence in Hebron. In 1929, so this I'm just going to mention, but it's deserves a whole class in itself. In 1921, there was a massacre in Hebron, and after that, the Jewish people couldn't live there anymore. And then from 1929 to 1967, we were not in Hebron. And then God's gift to us, the 6-Day War. Well, the war wasn't a gift, but what we gained was a gift, and we got Hebron back, which belonged to us. When I was 18 and I spent Shabbat in Hebron, I remember that they had this special tour that they did of the Arab quarter, and what they showed us is that a lot of the houses the Arabs were living, if you look closely, you see engraving, you see the place where the mezuzah used to be and where menorah used to be, because they're living in what used to be Jewish houses. So the situation today is now the Palestinians live there, 85% of it. Hebron is also the economic capital of the Palestinians. So Ramallah is the political capital, and the economic one is Hebron. And 33% of the gross national product comes from Hebron. Now, what they want to show you, a lot of times on the news, when you look at Hebron, and even in the pictures I'll show you, and what at least you see as a Jewish person driving through the tiny areas that we can, it looks very run down and dirty and broken. But that's not really the truth, because Hebron is this bustling city with casinos and hotels and 3 universities, 4 hospitals. It's a religious city. It's run by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, which is not great for us and not really great for the Jews living there, but that's the reality of the fact. And about 1,000 Jewish people. So when you are standing on the roof, this is what you're looking out at. Every single one of the buildings that you see here is Arab, and these are the neighbors of the Jewish people. So the Jews living in Hebron are, other than each other in the caravans, everyone else is Arab, and this is what they're looking at every day, and this is where they're living. How do they feel about it? So we'll get to that. But I just wanted to give you a look, as if you went to Hebron, what would you say? This is what you would say. Now, after a trip to Hebron, we go, and of course we start with the wall, because that's where the purchase took place. And everyone always wants to go to Me'arat HaMachpelah first. But I say we need to build up to that. We can't go to that first. And also other things which I'm not going to talk about, I'll just mention. They have a really beautiful visitor center in Hebron and a great movie. And it's really a city that everyone will enjoy, especially children, because this is what they're learning about in school. So how cool that you could bring it to them. What I want to talk about now is, how do we know if Me'arat HaMachpelah is really Me'arat HaMachpelah? Now, the picture that you see before you, I love asking my groups, what do you think this is? And I get all kinds of guesses. There's really no way to know. But the reason why I'm starting with this is because the way we discovered the entrance to Me'arat HaMachpelah started with this. So you see there's a lock over this opening. It's a dark tunnel which leads down, and this is known as Petach Hanerot. And there was this Arab tradition that they would light candles, and they would send it down, and then they would bring the candles back up, relight them, send them down. And they had this tradition that nobody was ever allowed to go down. If you go down, you don't know what's going to happen to you. It was this forbidden area known as Petach Hanerot. Okay. Where does the story begin about the discovery of Me'arat HaMachpelah? What does Petach Hanerot have to do with anything? So I mentioned the War of 1967. Depicted here, waving a white flag, is Rabbi Shlomo Goren. And the army knew, that Tzahal knew they were going to capture Hebron. And Rabbi Goren said, when you capture Hebron, I want to be a part of it. Don't go without me. And then it's a great story. He wakes up in the morning and he looks around and he sees all the jeeps are gone. So he says, oh no, I missed it, I'm too late. So he takes his driver and he drives all the way to Hebron, and he sees all the Palestinians, the Arabs, they have white flags hanging from their windows, and he drives straight up to Me'arat HaMachpelah. Now, what he finds out later is the army, they didn't leave and not tell him. They didn't get there yet. They were somewhere else. And he single-handedly liberated Hebron, because the Arabs thought that now the army is going to go in. So it's really amazing how one man did it. And once he has control of Me'arat HaMachpelah, once we get control again of Hebron, we want to explore and see what's there. And the Minister of Defense at the time, his name was Moshe Dayan, and he loved archaeology, and he wanted to see what is there. So I'm going to go back to Petach Hanerot. There was this man named Yehuda Arbel, and okay, I'm pausing my story for a second. So this is what Me'arat HaMachpelah looks like today. Like I mentioned, it doesn't look like a cave, but this is what it looks like. And this was built by Hebron, the outer building, and the cave story we're getting into now. So where's the cave? So this little girl over here, also a little girl, even though it looks a little bit like a boy over there, her name is Michal Adbel. This is her bigger. And I want you guys to look at the picture all the way on the bottom right. Does this hole look familiar? This is Michal Adbel, 12 years old, climbing down into the hole. What was the story? So in 1968, they said, we want to know what's down there, and the entrance is through this hole. Now, you need to send someone really small so they could fit. So they send down Michal Adbel, and they send her with a flashlight and with candles and with a notepad and a camera, and they say, we want you to take pictures, take notes of every single thing you say. Could imagine how scary it is. Michal Adbel did it then, and she says today as an adult that she would never do it again. She can't believe she did it then. So she goes down, and she sees and she feels this wind, and then she sees a bunch of steps. So she climbs down the steps, she counts 16, and then she sees this room with matzevot, which are monuments. Now, it's not Me'arat HaMachpelah, it's monuments from the times of the Crusades. She sees 3 of them, she writes it down, and then she doesn't explore further. She goes back up, she only counts 15 steps on her way back up, and she tells everyone what she found. So I'm going to show you a picture, which will help. So here's Petach HaNerot, steps. This is the room where she found the monuments. Now this over here, that is 2 caves, Michal Adbel did not discover that. She stopped over here. She might have even gone down twice, but that was what she found. Now they were very happy for her discovery because no one had been down, and we didn't know it was down there, but that was the most she was willing to do. Now I want to fast forward a little bit to 1981. 1981, we have people living in Hebron, and we have Midrashet Hebron, and they want to send people down. We have a Jewish community established. Now, I think this either 1981 or 1986. They want to send people down. Now, there's another opening to get down there. You can't see, here's a tunnel, this white over here. There's another opening over on the right side that you can't see, but it has like this chair on top of it and iron, and you can't just go down. So what do? So this is amazing, the creativity of the people. They said it's Chodesh Elul. And on Chodesh Elul, Sephardim, they say Selichot. And when they say Selichot, they say it really, really loudly. So a group of people, they go to Me'arat HaMachpelah early in the morning, about 2 a.m. And the Waqf, who is the Muslim police, they're looking at them. And they see they have Sidurim, they go in to pray. Okay. The next day, they come again. And again, they're looking at them, what are you doing? And they see that they're coming to pray, they ignore them. Third day they come and they don't pay attention to them anymore because clearly they're going to pray Selichot. Then the 4th day, they come not only with Sidurim, they come with something else. They bring crowbars and all kinds of tools. And their plan is that half the group is going to pray Selichot and scream and be loud, especially at the time when they're prying open the other opening to get down. And hopefully from all the noise that they're making, it'll cover it up and no one will know what's going on. So that's what they do. They're doing Selichot, they're screaming, they go down, and they come from the other side of the tunnel. And they start, and they notice that there's a lot of dirt down there, and they see pieces of pottery, and they see bones. Now the bones, they are not the bones of the Avot. They're bones from later time period. A lot of times when you have a holy area, everyone wants to be buried there. For example, Har HaZitim, there's graves there that date back to the time of the first Beit HaMikdash, and then the second Beit HaMikdash. And there's still people today that would love to be buried in Har HaZitim. So they find bones, and they notice something that Michal doesn't notice. They notice that there's this area with caves, which that makes sense considering Me'arat HaMachpelah. And they're digging further. They want to get into the caves. And then when they're about to get there, their friends say, quick, come back up. They're starting to get suspicious. Tefillah is over. They say, 1 second, please, let us we're done, we're here. No, you need to come up this second. What are they going to do? So they come back up quickly, and they put the rugs back, everything, and they leave. Now, they remembered to do everything. They remembered to put the bars back, cover it up, except they forgot to do one thing. The one thing they forgot to do was, I mentioned that there was a lot of dirt underneath. They forgot to wipe their shoes. They didn't wipe their shoes. And now the Waqf, they come into the room and they say, "What'd you guys do? You went down there. How'd you go down? Why is there dirt? Where did it come from?" And they say, "No, we didn't do it. What are you talking about? We'll prove to you we didn't do it." So then what's the proof? The proof that how they prove they didn't do it is the greatest gift that one of the greatest gifts we've gotten. So this was in 1986. They said, "Okay, we will send down an organized archaeological expedition down the hole, and the expedition will prove that we didn't touch anything." What a dream. Because to go as Michal Arbel went, or to go as these people went down, sneakily, quietly, is a very different story than if you're going organized with proper things to measure. And now the Muslims were not going to accompany because they were scared to go down to Petach HaNedah. So now they have a very organized expedition. And they're going down and they see the steps that Michal described, and they see the monuments, and they get to the cave. And they see that it's a double cave, which Machpelah means double. And they're digging and they're getting further in. And then the head archaeologist, whose name was Dr. Ze'ev Yavin, he says, I want to read his line for you. "I want to stop." "Why do you want to stop? Finally, you could see the Avot and Imahot buried here. You could get all the way to the end." And he says, "Hayanid Ali shezektzat yoter midai." He has respect for the place that he is. He's where the Avot and Imahot are buried. This Parashat we're reading now about Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah. They're the Avot and Imahot, of forefathers and mothers. And Dr. Ze'ev Yavin feels that there's just some things that archaeology can't go all the way with, and this is one of them. He doesn't want to discover all the way to the very end everything, so he stopped. And all of this information is written up on the internet. There might be some slight variations to the story, to the dates. There's tons and tons and tons of things printed and diagrams and pictures. And this is how we know that Me'arat Machpelah is indeed there. Now, there's traditions for thousands of years that it's in this spot, and now this discovery helps further it along. So I love telling this. I think it's an incredible story. What a brave girl. And what does it look like inside? So we saw what the building is. Now, if you go inside, it's a shul. They have chairs set up. Here's the mechitza, the women's section behind it. There's also, you'll notice these rooms, and on the rooms, there's these, I don't even know what to call it, monuments. And it says over here, Tziyun Kever Avraham Avinu. Now, some people make the mistake of thinking, hey, it says on the sign, Tziyun, meaning we're acknowledging the grave of Avraham Avinu, must be Avraham Avinu was buried there, and they pray and they try to touch it. Now we know that Avraham Avinu is buried under the ground, and deep under the ground. This is just to help the people coming gain perspective, remember that Avraham Avinu is buried in this complex, but he's not buried inside there. And he's not the only one that has a room. You see this man looking through. Sarai Imenu also has a room, and Yitzchak and Rivka, but it's not where they're buried because they're buried all the way underground. But that's something you'll see when you go in. Also, something that amazes me, you can find a Koyakov Sidur in Me'arat Machpelah. You could find Koyakov everywhere. At the Kotel, when I go pray there, I always use a Koyakov. Even here in Me'arat Machpelah, you could find one too. And if you look up at the ceiling, it's really beautiful. So throughout the generations, there were different groups that were in control of Me'arat Machpelah. And what you see here, Arabic calligraphy and writing and the design. This room over here is known as Ulamitrak, and this is where Petach HaNerot is. Now, I don't know if you've ever been inside a mosque. Maybe I'll do a Zoom in the future about a mosque and what it looks like. This over here is, there's no furniture in a mosque, is so when the Muslims pray, they can each have their square on the carpet. And you see it's really, really empty. Now, why aren't there any Jewish people in there? You see this Muslim woman over here. Me'arat Machpelah, this is for your further investigation another time, is divided. If you go into Me'arat Machpelah today, there are rooms that are locked that are closed that only the Muslims can go into, and there's rooms that only we can go into. One of them is Ulamitrak, which is the biggest room and the room with Petach Hanerot in it. Why can't we go everywhere? Why can't they go everywhere? When did this happen? I'm going to tell that story another time, but just know that it is divided. However, there are 10 days a year where we have control of the entire Manat Machpelah and can go into every room. And there's 10 days a year where the Arabs can do that. No, we got to pick our days, they got to pick their days. So I just want to share the days with you. Rosh Chodesh Elul, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, 1 day of the 10, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shabbat Chayesara, and Pesach. Now I want to zone in on Shabbat Chayesara, which is this Shabbat. Shabbat Chayesara is one of the most fun and exciting Shabbatot of the year, especially if you live in Israel. This year, it's not going to exist the same way that it's going to exist, but it's not going to be the same as usual because you see all the people crowded inside. Corona can't happen. But I've had the zechut, the honor, the privilege of being in Hebron, the Shabbat that we read the Parashat at least 3 times. And during that Shabbat, Ulamitrak is opened, and you see all the people praying inside. And it's a fantastic Shabbat. Last year, there were 30,000 people in Hebron during that Shabbat, which is way more than the 1,000 that are usually there, or maybe even less. So you can imagine what strength it brings the community of Hebron, that all of a sudden there's so many Jews. And God willing, it won't only be for one Shabbat, it'll be all the time that many Jews. And there's tours, and it's just a really fun experience to be with so many people of Am Yisrael and get to be in Hebron. That's ours, that we lived in, that belongs to us, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. So that's this weekend, Shabbat Chayesara. Now, Kiryat Arba, I'm just going to say 2 sentences about it. In the Torah, it says Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron. Today, we have a separate community. You can see each other. You could see Hebron from Kiryat Arba and vice versa. This is a Jewish community. It has about 7,000 people living in there. It's only Jewish people, no Arab neighbors except in the far distance. And people that want to live near Hebron, but maybe don't want to live deep in the heart of it, Jewish people, they live in Kiryat Arba, and it's a really beautiful neighborhood. Now, there's this road that connects Kiryat Arba and Hebron. And it used to be really scary to go on the road because it's Arabs all living on the road. Except there was this man that maybe all of you know, there is, and his name is Maris Abraham. And he bought this building known as Bet HaShalom, which he calls Bet HaShalom now. And this building connects Kiryat Arba and Hebron, and you see the Jewish flags. So now, when you drive to Hebron from Kiryat Arba or vice versa, you have Jewish people there, and it gives you a feeling of calmness. And the story of how he even bought it is incredible in itself, because you can't just go and buy it. You have to do it in secret and with video cameras and a whole big process to buy land in Hebron. And it's really an incredible thing that he did. And to also, when you visit Hebron, to go visit Bet HaShalom and meet the families that live in there. The families living there originally, they had no water, no electricity. They were really living in very hard conditions, but they said, it's Hebron, we're not going to live here. So that's something I just wanted to mention for those of you that are familiar or not familiar with the story. Also going on today, there are tons of new excavations. These are the steps leading down to a mikveh. And they keep discovering more and more and more. They also, this wall over here, I mentioned that the Meraglim that came to Eretz Canaan, they stopped in Hebron. Not I mentioned, the Pesukim mentioned it. And when they come back to Moshe, they say, Moshe, the cities are huge and the walls are so high and we won't be able to conquer them. And this wall over here, and this, now it's you see in this picture that it's a little bit covered by the grass. Now it's much more dug out. You see the size of the stones, you see how big it is, and you could point at it and say, this is an example of a wall that maybe the Meraglim saw because it dates back to their time. And when they went back to Moshe and said the cities are huge, this is what they were looking at. So we have another connection. I also want to give you something else to do when you go to Hebron. There's this place in Kiryat Arba called Tefilin Hebron. One of the people really involved is Harav Yoshua Shani, who was a past Rosh Yeshiva of Barkai Yeshiva. And when you go to Tefilin Hebron, it's fantastic to take specifically our Bar Mitzvah boy there, but even if you're not Bar Mitzvah, anyone could go, because they teach you in the most engaging, fun way possible about the mitzvah of Tefilin. I've been there about 7 times, and really, I want to put on Tefilin. not going to, but after learning about the mitzvah, I literally tear up. I say, wow, what a beautiful mitzvah. The men are so lucky that they get to do this every day and to really understand the way the tefillin are. And then when you close the box, there's 12 holes for the 12 shavatim, and it's for, especially if it's a mitzvah that men are doing every single day, almost every day on Shabbat, to understand what it is and how it's made and how it's built and the care and love that goes into it is just fantastic. So I highly recommend going to Tefilin Hebron. It's right nearby. Here's this is Sean and Ezra Bennon's daughter. I was with them for their son Stephen's Bar Mitzvah, and after we got the whole explanation, they were letting the kids try out writing on kalaf if they wanted to. And another really fun thing, this is from a game show. After you learn about the mitzvah, everyone gets these remote controls, and there's a game show. You play based on what you learn, so it's really, really engaging and really fun. Plus, they also have, I know there's tons of stores that sell Judaica, especially in Jerusalem, Ben Yehuda Street, there's a ton. The prettiest store I know in Israel is the store in Hebron. And you think they all sell the same things, but for whatever reason, the store in Hebron, is my opinion, in Kiryat Arba is the prettiest. And I love what they have, and I always buy something. I also am very happy to support the Jews living in Hebron. So that's another reason why I do it. And now I just want to take a minute to talk about living there. Now, we saw the amount of Arabs living there and that the Jews in Hebron live in caravans. It's not so comfortable. It's pretty far. The drive from Jerusalem to Hebron takes about an hour, maybe a little bit more. I believe in something so important what they're doing. And if we love Hebron and we know that it belongs to us, we're not going to live there. It doesn't make sense to not live there. And so they live there despite whatever difficult conditions it would be. Now, a lot of people here don't go to Hebron. It's dangerous. It's scary. I go to Hebron. I would not put my life at risk, and I would not put anyone else's life at risk. I would not take a group to Hebron if I believe they would be in danger. I would not. And I go to Hebron, and thank God now that the drive really is very pleasant, and you feel so special. You're in the city of the Avot where David HaMelech was as well, and you're learning your whole life in school about this, and your kids are learning it, and you're not going to go to Hebron. And now I want to almost conclude. When we spoke to when the woman spoke to us, the mom, the daughter selling the ices, and she spoke to the group, she said, "Thank you for coming. It gives us such strength to know that we're not alone living here, that you're coming and it's important to you and you want to visit." So visiting itself is really, really huge, and it strengthens the Jewish community of Hebron, and it enlightens your day. Your year will really be different because you spend time in Hebron. I want to summarize what we spoke about. So we started out with the story of the Isis and Achanasat Orchim and welcoming guests, how it was so apparent and so connected. We saw how many times Hebron is mentioned in the Tanakh. We saw a picture of the walls and the steps, the city gate where the purchase Me'arat HaMachpelah took place. We discussed Hebron today, and how Hebron really itself, even though we're led to believe that it's this poor city, it's not. The Arabs do amazingly well there. We spoke about the discovery of the cave with Petach Hanerot, Michal Arbel, and later on the organized expedition. We saw a picture of what Me'arat HaMachpelah looks like today, and we looked at it inside. We mentioned the Jewish community of Kiryat Arba, which is neighboring, Bet Shalom, which was built by Maris Abraham and connects the two communities. There's new excavations, which I'm telling you, I didn't even discover them enough. I saw them once. I need to go back. And Tefilin Hebron, which is a wonderful way to enhance the day at Hebron. Now, I want to just end with a question. We started, and now we're going to end with why Hebron? Why live in Hebron? And I want to ask you, and I ask myself the same thing. What part do you want of life in Hebron? How do you want to be involved? And I'm going to give a list of suggestions that I think, and of course, there's many more. Right. One, living there. That's definitely an amazing way to support Hebron, is to go and live there. This is the mom. Her daughter's not in the picture. This is Lisa Didia and her husband and kids. This is the inside of one of the caravans. She lives in Hebron, so that's definitely great for the community and for the Jewish people. And there's actually a waiting list of people that want to live in Hebron, but to get an empty house is not easy. So that's one way to live there. Two, wait, let me go back. Visiting. Come and visit Hebron. This, if you're looking at a computer and you might recognize some faces in the picture, Ezra Benin, Sean Benin, and family for Stephen's Bar Mitzvah trip. So we visited Hebron, and every single person visiting Hebron strengthens the community, strengthens Am Yisrael. Purchasing land, you can take part in purchasing. We have Bet Shalom. There's also this organization called Harchivi Makom Ohalach, and what they involve themselves in is buying houses in Hebron so Jews could live in them. And it's a very, very long and hard process to do. Here we see something called Bet Rachel, which was a building they managed to buy. So that's another way to get involved. You could purchase land in Eretz Yisrael. And second to last one, learning and reading about Hebron. The more we learn about it, the more we know, the more we love it. That is amazing and a great way to start. And of course, praying for Hebron, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu always wants our tefillah. We learned tefillot from the Avot. They lived in Hebron, so we always want to pray for them. And I really hope and encourage you to go to Hebron. It is an incredible city. You'll feel so connected to your roots, to your identity, to who you are. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure speaking about Hebron with you today. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Hi, Adele.
Hi.
Hi, that was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I go to Hebron all the time when I'm there.
Wow, good for
all
you.
All the time.
I don't go
I
enough.
feed the soldiers. I go to the bakery and get stuff and feed the soldiers in the 2 army bases.
Wow, that's so kind.
And no. But I miss it. You know, when you go to where the people are living, and you go to that little area that's like a park, you know, right by Yishai and Ruth. You know, you go stand on that mountain there. When you look, that's where the city first was, right? So when you look down, you see that, which is what you showed. And that must have been where Abraham was when he had Ruach HaKodesh and saw it, maybe, because that's where he was.
Right.
Interesting, no?
Definitely.
All right, thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye, Ralph. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.